Okay. I need you to tell me if you are on Facebook, if you are able to see my screen. Maximizing nurse CNA relationship part 2. Can you type something and let me know if you see it? It's very important. Otherwise, I can keep talking, but I need you to let me know if you're able to see my screen. All right, you know what? I'm going to put it where I can see what you're typing in the private chat. Let me know if you can see my screen, Janice. Okay, I don't see anything yet. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start. Like I said, I am going to have the whole presentation on Facebook on nurse training and advocacy, and I'm also going to have it on the same channel on YouTube. So welcome everybody. Again, I apologize for all the, anyway, I am showing my inaptitude in the realm of technology. I am definitely challenged on that score. This is Nurse Training and Advocacy. I'm Maggie Lazar, and I am passionate about training nurses and nurse managers and supervisors about how they can improve their skills to become the best that they can be at their job, enjoy it, empower and enjoy their staff and empower them so that they can have the best relationship, because work as it is tough, and we are living in unprecedented time in terms of staffing, mood, demographics. So we are truly challenged. I was in a training class today all day. In fact, I was really stressing because I hadn't done my PowerPoint. The class ended like about 3 o'clock, and I had to do this PowerPoint in like 2 hours, and I was rushing, rushing, rushing. But I had all my material done. I just had to format it. But anyway, I'm happy with it. And then it was like, boom, I hit this technological roadblock, and I was I was a little bit stressed out. But anyway, I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy getting to a point where I can relax and just share everything I've learned over the last 30 plus years with you all. I'm going to start teaching at a university next week. And I'm just pumped about, again, just sharing with the new generation everything I've learned. Okay, so last week I did a presentation on CNA and nurse conflict. I have been a nurse for over 30 years, and I can tell you, I have seen anything and everything under the sun in terms of, it's not just nurse CNA, nurse and nurse, nurse and management. You have people working together, you're going to have conflict. But the conflict with CNA and nurses is a little bit unique. And I'm not sure why that is, that level of resentment and um, disrespect sometimes that I see. And I think what I'm observing these days is that because of what's happening in the community, in the world, and the stresses that everybody is under, it's like adding another layer of inhumanity. And when they say there's no filter now, people feel emboldened to say and do. It transfers everywhere, because just like you see the Karens, they call them, on the airplanes and everywhere in the restaurants, I see them in the hospitals. I see them in skilled nursing facilities where people have no respect. It used to be if you have a conflict, you had a grievance, you had a way of approaching someone and say, I'm unhappy about this. I have a concern. People just don't follow those channels anymore. They just come in your face and they just ready to, it's there is no filter. People don't process anything. It's just like we just become spontaneous and acting on impulse. And it creates sometimes a dangerous situation. So when you are dealing with anybody, not just CNAs and nurses in your practice, you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind, because as you're dealing with different groups of people, and everything we've experienced lately, the availability of weapons and people's anger and people's complaints, and they have a list of grievances and they take it out on other people, you have got to kind of take a step back and you got to measure yourself. You have to think through how you're going to address certain situations so that you can protect yourself and your patients, because everybody at this point in time is at risk for violence in the workplace. Look what happened to those doctors, okay? Not to scare anyone, but this is our reality. Not to say that it's going to happen to us. We're not saying that. I'm not saying that. But we have to be smart about how we manage people, how we deal with our peers. So if we can learn some skills to kind of lower the temperature and create environments where the risks is lessened. I'm not saying we're going to reduce all the risks of violence in the workplace. I remember in the 80s and 90s when I was in home health, we didn't have risk of patients attacking nurses. What we had a rash of domestic issues where we had boyfriends and ex-husbands and coming into the workplace, in a home care office, where we ended up having to have locks and stuff like that. And that was like, we were like all aghast. It's like, what do you mean we have to have locks and have people buzz you in? Now we have metal detectors in school. Who would have thought? The times have changed. They are changing. All right, so this is Nurse Training and Advocacy. This is my company. This is what we do. We do training, and we're going to be doing a whole lot more. I am currently working on a online training course for nurse supervisors, and it is kicking my you know what, because it's a lot of work in terms of the format and how you put it together and how you put it through the channel so people know it's available. Anyway, let's get going. Nurses and nursing assistants, we are an unbreakable bond, okay? If you are a nurse, you are a nursing assistant, we are partners. We're in a marriage. We cannot be divorced. We can have, um, we may not like each other at times. We may not see eye to eye on certain things, but at the end of the day, we have one thing in common, is our patient, right? So just like when you have a husband and wife, they may be mad at each other, but they have their kids. They have to take care of the kids. And sometimes they stay together for the sake of the kids. So when we as nurses have our CNAs, nurse techs, whatever we call them, we need them, right? They may say they don't need us, but they do need us. The patients need both of us. And I don't care what anybody says, you can have the best trained doctors, nurse practitioners. If you don't have CNAs at the bedside, you got nothing. You have no business. If you don't have those CNAs to get these patients dressed and get them up to go to therapy, to go to the doctor's appointments, and to they are indispensable. So, the gist of what I'm going to talk about is how can we get that relationship, nurture the relationship to the point where it's workable, it's nurturing, it's positive, it's enhancing, right? Because when you spend, let's say you work 12-hour shifts and you work 3 12-hour shifts, and most likely you work more than 3 12-hour shifts, right? If you're spending that much time in one place, you want it to be not stressful all the time, right? You have enough to do as a nurse dealing with physician's assistants, EMS personnel, therapy, family members, the lab, and all those external and all this stuff coming at you. Then you have to have this going on with your teammate. That's an added layer of stress that you don't need. So you're going to have to learn the skill to, you got to nip it in the bud. If you spend a little bit of time nurturing, training your CNAs to know how you feel, how you think, how you manage your patient, you're going to become a well-oiled machine. Now, I know it's a challenge now with the shortage, with people going in and out. You got a revolving door of um, agency personnel, people going here, going there. Yes, I know you challenge. And everything is a season. It's seasonal in healthcare. Just like this shortage, there's nothing new under the sun. The shortage is not new. Everybody knows that COVID did not cause the shortage. We know that. We all say the same thing. It just kind of brought it up again. I've been a nurse for 30 years. In the 1980s, they said, oh my God, we're not going to have any nurses left. And with COVID, they said the same thing. Oh my God, we're not going to have. Do you know nurses are still going to nursing school? They're still applying to nursing school. I'm going to be teaching nurses. Even in the worst of worst, when you go on Facebook, everybody's saying, "Oh, I'm leaving nursing. I'm fed up. I can't do it anymore." People were just fighting to get into nursing school, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. So we can't escape. Nursing is still a very attractive um, career for a lot of people. Okay, don't get it twisted. Look at those stats. In America, I'm talking about the world, we have about 4.3 million jobs, and that's RN only. That's a lot of nurses, y'all. And even though we have about 193,000 open positions, so think about it. It's almost like we could have like 6 million positions of RN jobs. In terms of LPNs, we have about 641,000. That's a lot of LPNs. You remember the days where they were like, oh, we want to go, we want to eliminate the LPNs. We want all the nurses to be RNs. Do you remember those times? Yeah, right. They're not singing that song anymore. Everybody's like, you're not talking about that anymore. CNAs, about 1.4 million CNAs working. Okay. The median, remember, median is not average. Median is like they take the highest, the lowest, and right in the middle is the value that they take, which could be higher or lower than the average, which is where you add up all the values and you divide it by the number. Okay, the median is kind of a more accurate. The median annual salary of an RN is 77,000. When I graduated, it was about 30-some thousand. So we've come a long way. Yes, it's still not enough. I agree. I agree. For an LPN, 48,000. For a CNA, 30,000. And that's a big discrepancy, right? I think it should be a lot more. What do you think? So, can you see why there might be a little bit of resentment there? And I know you're going to say, well, I went to school. They didn't go to school. I know. I know. But still, the paycheck is so different. And you went to school. They didn't go to school. Do you know why they didn't go to school? Could there be because they weren't able? Could it be they didn't have the opportunity? So don't be judge and jury. You don't know what caused this person to only be making this little bit of money. And when we talk about the reason for some of the conflict, why some of it may have the attitude, can you imagine if you have someone um, making $30,000 today, and you have about, let's say, two children, you're a single parent, you're renting, price of gas, price of rent, price of food. Think about it. Just do a basic math and see and find out how this single mom is managing with this money. Okay. She probably has to get another job, and you wonder why she's dragging sometimes, why she takes breaks, why you're finding her behind the curtain taking a nap. Hmm? Why she's not really working like she should, performing. All right, I need you to think about that. Now, the annual outlook is, how did they describe it? It's the outlook for job prospects, for this group of jobs. So if they say, like, in 5 years, how many jobs in these categories are we going to need? They say they're going to be 9% of these jobs are still going to be needing. I mean, the growth of these jobs being available is still going to be ongoing. So which means they're still going to need, like, in 2023, they're still going to need nurses. They're still going to need LPN. They're still going to need CNAs. So when you are looking ahead on a career path, if you were like in high school, in middle school, healthcare is still very attractive. Okay. You're not going to starve. You're not going to be homeless. You're going to struggle maybe if you don't become a nurse or an RN. You might struggle if you stay a CNA at this salary, you're going to struggle. Okay? Anybody who's making this little bit of money is going to struggle in these Americas today. Think about 5 years from now. So if you're in this job category and you have responsibility, hopefully you're thinking ahead of improving yourself by getting some skills, going to school so you can kind of get more money, right? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Why is there conflict in healthcare? I just said, when you're dealing with people, you're going to have conflict. And in the beginning of the presentation, I talked about what's happening in the community, in the world, and all the stressors and the shift in people's thinking, and how there is a perceived disrespect and lack of filtering where people feel entitled to do and say whatever. So when you have increased pressure, sometimes it shows itself in behavior, right? Just like when I work with my patients in the facilities, if somebody's in pain, they act out. If somebody has a headache or they have dementia and they cannot verbalize what is wrong, what's going on, they get agitated. Same thing when you have people, just you and I. Let's say I'm going to a divorce, or I have teenagers at home who are really stressing me out. I may snap at work, right? I may come to work late. I may be going to menopause and not sleeping well at night. So I'm irritable, right? So people are people. We're human. Sometimes things in our lives will affect our relationships. So that's why you kind of have to be a psychologist when you're dealing with people, all people, not just the nursing assistants, right? When you're dealing with your family members, when you're dealing with fellow colleagues, when you're dealing with your nursing assistant, same thing. So as a nurse, if I was talking to some CNAs, I would say when you see your nurse acting out, think about those things. They have increased responsibility with COVID. Think about it. You have to go in there and take care of these people, thinking that you might expose yourself to this stuff. I got COVID, okay? Because I cared about my patients and I caught it. I was in the hospital. I could have died, right? We put our lives on the line every single day. So do the CNAs, don't get me wrong. So, but we have a lot of responsibility in terms of holding people's lives in our hands. The CNAs, up to a point, but not so much. We're administering medication, so we have a higher level of responsibility. Think of the lady who, had the accident that caused the death of the patient. I keep forgetting her name, Rashonda or something like that. But anyway, we do every single day have that responsibility that something may go wrong because of a procedure or a treatment or a medication that we administer. That is an ever present liability. Shortage stress. Oh my God. I don't have to say anything else about that. Ungrateful, disrespecting public. Again, I think I mentioned that earlier, where people, I say, in the last 5 years, they kept saying, US News would say, oh, for the fifth or 25th year, nursing is the most respected profession. And this year I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think you could say that nursing is the most respected profession, because nowadays we feel truly disrespected because some family members are totally, totally out of line. The way they talk to you, the way they demand things, they treat you like you their slave, right? And as a supervisor, I used to always have to set them straight. I said, sir, I am here to provide you a service. You will watch how you talk to me. If you have a question, you ask me. If I know the answer, I will give it to you. If I don't, I will find it. But please do not talk to me in that tone. So we do, and that's why I teach nurses and nursing supervisors to be assertive in a calm, professional way. Okay. When we allow family members, CNAs, colleagues to treat us any kind of way, it perpetuates. Okay. So that could cause some people stress, because if they haven't been taught how to handle that, it's going to cause them stress, right? And could be family pressures, of course. And CNA, some of the same reason could be a reason why, we talked about the low wages, if they're single parents and they have all kind of other pressures. But think about CNA work, nurses, we have 30, 60 patients passing meds, we're on our feet a lot, but that is, I want to say nothing, but it's different compared to what our CNAs are doing. Mm. Would you want to spend 8 hours every day yanking, pulling, turning, repositioning, up, down, bend, up and down? I know I wouldn't. I know I was in the ICU one day. I took a lady out of bed. She got out okay. And when I went to put her back to bed, she just went limp. And I heard this boom in my back. And I was like, oh my God, no. Yeah. You know, and my CNA would be doing that all day. And sometimes you feel the resentment in them because they don't want to hurt themselves. So they try not to do not to move those patients too much. And of course, the therapists come, oh, the therapist come and says, oh, yeah, they can do that, they can do that. But yet, if you have to do it for 10, 12 patients every single day, it adds up, guys. It does. It's physically challenging for those poor CNAs. And one thing I did mention, I didn't do a slide on that. Just like they say, the average age of a nurse is 52. The average age of a CNA is 41. So we are no spring chicken. We're all aging together. Okay. So, you know, we don't have anything on them there. Still, they have abusive residents and family members. I think our CNAs take the brunt of the abuse from our patients. I was doing some research on de-escalating behaviors and violence in the workplace. And do you know our CNAs are the most, they have the most reportable incident of violence in healthcare. They're the ones that get attacked the most, you know. In long-term care, they get scratched, they get spit on, they get slapped, they get shoved. And of course, in long-term care, or I guess anywhere, they get, CNA can slap you, you can slap him back, even though I had a CNA react and slap the patient back, and of course, poor little thing lost her job. But they get the brunt of the violence. And occupational exposures, I wouldn't say they get the most, because we get a lot in terms of all the checks that we do, all the IV lines. But in terms of blood and body fluids, our CNAs get a lot, all the wound and the bed changes and the dressing changes and the colostomies and the snot and the vomiting and the emesis and all that. Our CNAs get a lot of exposures. So these jobs are not for the faint at heart. Okay, yes, we can make a living, but we do have some, risks involved. So, there is no glamour in this job. So you go in those jobs with your eyes open. It's like, you sign up to go to be in the army or whatever. You go in there with your eyes open, because you could get killed, and you go in healthcare, you could catch something. That's just the name of the game. The name of the game. I caught COVID. I couldn't say I'm not going to work, although I did say after I caught it, I wasn't going back back there. But I did catch it. That was the first thing I caught. I had a nurse who caught hepatitis. I don't think I knew anybody who caught HIV, but we do get it. You know, that's what we do. All right. Next slide. How does conflict show up in the workplace? We talked about all the possibilities of what could cause conflict, but how does it manifest itself? Now, remember, I said, because you have a bunch of people working together, imagine in a hospital, you have dozens, hundreds of people together, you're going to have conflict, right? But my education program focused a lot on long-term care, because that pretty much was the last, I guess, 10 years. That's where I practice. So we're going to deal a lot more with CNA and nurse behaviors. All right. And I picked some of the ones that are a little bit more prevalent, but we could have a long list, right? So you guys know that. Refuse the assignment. My last two jobs were supervisor on the weekends. Shifts were like 6:45. Now, a lot of times when I roll in at about 6:50, 6:55, somebody had made the schedule, and I'm usually so thankful, because if there is one thing I hate to do is the CNA assignment, because there is always some fussing going on, and I'm being kind when I say fussing. I wanted to use a B word, but I'm on camera. I'll be a lady. Um, but if you have call off, like a couple of call offs, and usually they would have called me at 5 o'clock to say, what do you want to do? And I'm like, "Phew, I'll deal with it when I get there. I'm not going to call anybody at 5 a.m. to do anything." So it's like rearranging. And once you start rearranging, it's like it's going to be a bad day. If you're going to rearrange where you're going to have to move people, float people, it's going to be a bad day. It doesn't matter how you look at it. If you don't have a bad day, thank your lucky stars. That means the stars are aligned, right? So I had a nurse one time. She had made a deal with the staffing coordinator that she was going to do an extra shift on that particular unit. Well, that particular unit was fully staffed and I had a call off. So we assigned her to another unit. Mademoiselle walked in and she's like, well, I told so and so I was only going to work on that unit. Well, I'm like, well, I don't need you on that unit. And that nurse, that is her floor and she's working. So I need you over here. Mademoiselle picked up her bag and she walked off. And I was like, okay. So the staff looked at me and they're like, Miss Maggie, you're gonna let her go. Who's gonna take the cart? And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go run after her and say, oh please, pretty please, or you wanna work? I was like, no, I'm not gonna beg you to work. I'm a nurse. I will take the cart. It's okay. And that's how supervisors, managers, nurses, uh, DON end up working sometimes. But you know what? I would rather take the cart than having to beg a nurse to work. Because you see, once you beg someone to work, you've already reversed the relationship. You've lost respect in front of that particular nurse, and you've lost respect in front of your peers and her peers. So she's got the upper hand. So they're saying, oh, well, next time I know I can do that. So I let her go. I think I ended up letting the two nurses work and I just did all their treatments, because as a supervisor, you have the flexibility to figure out how you're going to make it work, right? And then you write it up. So anyway, if somebody refuses an assignment, but she never worked again, which is what should happen, because if an employee is so insubordinate to just walk off a unit, not because there was an altercation between employees, not because there was an incident between her and a resident, not because of anything else, just because you didn't like the assignment. I'm sorry, that is not a valid reason for you to walk off an assignment. So she was terminated. And so she should have been terminated. And I think the problem that we run into in facilities is that you have management that is so weak, management that is so subservient to their staff that they don't know how to manage. They're so afraid of plugging a hole one shift and they don't think of the repercussion of that one incident and what it means to the rest of their team, right? When you run after a team member, a staff member, and you beg them and you on your knees and you make them feel so important, you've already lost that battle. You can't do that. And I think that's what a lot of nurses and staff members are complaining about, that management doesn't have their back. And if you're a manager, you're watching me now, I'm sorry. The ball's in your court. You have created that environment. And I keep saying all the time, I used to own a home care company. I ran that for 13 years. When I sold that company, my staff cried because I know I spent time and energy. I invested in creating the kind of team and environment that I wanted to create. I got on a plane and went to Europe for 3 weeks and let them manage the place. I say, you don't call me unless the place is burning down. You empower your team. So everything starts from the top. It takes time for you to train. Like if you take your team and you have them watch this program, you have to invest, you have to give them the time to be trained, to practice what they learn. You can't expect them to function if you don't train them. And once you train them, you have to empower them. And once you empower them, you have to really empower them and let them do it. And don't hover, don't micromanage. And if they make a mistake, say, well, that's how we learn, right? I don't know. Managers are not created equal. You decide the type of unit you're going to have. You decide the kind of team you're going to build. Yes, even in the time of COVID. Yes, even in the nursing shortage. Those are challenges that as a leader you can rise to the occasion. Okay, now if you're a nurse, you're a leader of your team. That bunch, the room, the block of room that you have, that's your team. That's your territory. You managing that team. You're responsible for it. Whoever touches those patients should report to you. You're the leader of that team. Okay? All right. I got on a soapbox. I'm sorry. So if a staff member refuses the assignment, you say, okay, you keep your cool. You don't lose it. You acknowledge it. You say, do you realize that is unacceptable? But she was calm too. But if she got, let it go. You remain calm. You review the alternatives, telling them that is unacceptable behavior. This is not a reason for you to walk off a job, and you know what's going to happen. Okay? Never allow disrespect. That means you, even if they show disrespect to you, you don't show disrespect to them. You never, ever, ever lower yourself to their level. Okay? Again, if you do that, you've lost the battle. Don't do it. Privately discuss consequence if they allow you. Because usually if they're going to leave, they're at the door. They're not going to come talk to you in that room or take them to the side. Okay? Be kind, yet be firm. You don't have to huff and puff. You just go about your business, keeping calm and collected. Now, I'm naturally calm. Somebody else, it might be a challenge for you. It might be hard for you to be calm because you're like, oh my God, that means I'm going to have to take the card. Blah, 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 blah. In the case, if you're a nurse, it's going to be, you're going to be short one CNA. And you say, okay, if you're a nurse, I was thinking more in terms of supervisor before. But if you're a nurse and your CNA walks off, you have your staffing coordinator, you have your supervisor, you have your manager, you have resources of who you can talk to and how you're going to reassign the rooms, how you can have somebody from another area come. You have options. Okay. Don't let it be, oh my God, the end of the world. Don't do that, because that kind of stuff, it seeps through your team, okay, and creates chaos and anxiety. Oh, I think that's what I was doing. Walks off the job. Oh, refuse the assignment. Oh, I was way ahead of myself. Okay, walks off the job. Make sure you have a facility policy that says what happens if they walk off the job. I think I was jumping ahead, right? Because if your facility doesn't have a policy, you can't enforce it. Okay, because you don't want the employee to feel like you're trying to single them out. You have to say, you can call your DON and say, okay, what's the policy? Because now you don't have a book, you don't have a big old fat manual that's sitting on your desk. You could go, what do they call that? You go in Teams or internet or whatever to look it up if you have time. But somebody might know what is the penalty for somebody walking off the job, and they'll tell you, right? Let management know. If I have somebody walk off the job, I'm going to call somebody and let them know. Staffing, unit manager, yeah. CYA, let somebody know, okay? Provide written documentation of event. So this is one of those, when I do my training, I tell them you have a form. You make sure that is a to-do list added to your to-do list, so that before you leave for your shift, you do a documentation, make a copy for yourself, and make sure you give it to your manager. All right. Keep your documentation objective. You don't say, well, I think she did. This is what happened. Miss So and so came in and blah blah blah. I asked her to do this. She did that. She walked off at this time. Punto. No personal statement. We don't want to know how you feel. Objective. Stick to the facts. Okay. No personal inferences. Mouth off. Oh my God. How many of you have had those CNAs who just mouth off to you? You talking to them, they just, it's all attitude, attitude, attitude. Well, actually, I mean, I've had a few CNAs, but I had a nurse that I work with. This girl, I don't think she had one blood cell that wasn't mean. This girl, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure she had a rough life, but boy, oh boy, she was mean as a snake. But it was one of those things, you needed her to take the cart. It's like, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to work with her. I don't need to be friendly with her, let her do, and I had the least amount of interaction as possible. It was exhausting just to have a minimum conversation. But we're talking about CNA nurse relationship. If you have a CNA who constantly mouths off, you probably need to have a talk with her, because in my view, if she's mouthing off to you, she will mouth off to the patient, to the family members, and that to me is totally unacceptable. So you don't want to, like, in the hall saying, "What did you say?" You wait until she's calm and you say, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Take her to the side and say, "Are you okay? Is everything okay? I noticed that you're a little bit, because you want to show that you care, not that you want to say, well, I didn't appreciate you talking to me like that, blah, blah, blah." You don't want to go on the defensive, okay? In situations like this, you want to come off as you care. Is everything okay? I noticed that you know, you sound a little bit upset. Anything I can do? What's going on? Because I kind of want watch you talk to Mr. So and so, and I'm not really getting that. It's not really appropriate. So can I anything we can do? Let's talk about it. Okay, what's going on? So you want to come kind of low, not that you afraid or scared. That's not the point. Remember, the goal is not to engage. The goal is not to escalate. All right. I do a class on de-escalation technique too. Now, this is also de-escalation. If somebody is upset, if somebody, maybe the patient said or did something to them, or maybe they're having a lot of stress at home, or maybe they just had it with another coworker, whatever the reason is. They didn't have their cigarette and it's time. You know how it is, whatever it is. So you're trying to find the source of the problem and trying to redirect that person as to how they need to manage whatever emotions that they're dealing with so that they can do their job. You can go outside. I used to tell people, if you see a staff member really getting frayed at the edges and they're really like this, you could say, okay, you know what? Why don't you take 5? Go outside and step out for a little minute and take some, get a little fresh air. Because you might want to answer a couple of lights for her versus her having, an explosion in the middle of the unit. You don't want to do that. You don't want that. Okay. So try to find out what the problem is. Okay. Never address a coworker, CNA or otherwise, in the heat of the moment. Because if she is mouthing off and she's verbally, you know, aggressive, you don't want to, again, like I said, you don't want to do this because she's going to escalate. You're going to escalate. I've seen people almost ready to, I'm like, oh my God. Yes. And I'm a chicken. I don't think I would ever get into a fist fight with someone, right? But people can lose themselves. So you got to be careful. So when somebody is always, sometimes I see staff members just have an explosion and I don't say anything. And I've seen the staff was like, Miss Maggie, did you see that? I'm like, yeah, I saw that. And it almost like they were questioning me, and you didn't do anything about it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna address it in the heat of the moment. I'm just gonna wait till they calm. Sometimes it's almost the end of the shift. Then I'm going like, come over here. Let me talk to you for a minute. Right? So you want to always address it. You don't want to let anything go by because you may forget the next day. They're off tomorrow, you off tomorrow, and then they get a pass, right? You want to address whatever it is, but when stay calm, never in the heat of the moment. Find out what's going on and redirect. Because if it, you might want to say, well, I really empathize with what's going on at home. But this is work, people are sick and they need us. And we don't need to bring our problems from home in here. Can you understand that? Would you want, if you had your mom here, for someone to bring their own problems to her? I don't think it's fair, right? So do me a favor and try. And if there's anything I can do, come here, come get me and I'll help you. Let me know what you need me to do to help you, but just kind of try to keep that away and not bring it to Mrs. That's not cool. All right. And I think most people will respond to that level of engagement versus somebody saying, well, you know what, that is not appropriate for you to go in there and do that. Right? You didn't solve anything by saying that. Okay. Be kind, but be firm. Always, always. All right. What about someone who's got repeated substandard care? How about when you come on and your CNA comes to you? Well, that happens every time. I go to my patients and everybody's wet. There's trash in the room. How many times you've heard that? Almost every week I had a complaint. So now I know sometimes we have some CNAs who are constant complainers, right? We got those, they were like, whoo, it's uppity. All their patients are always supposed to be dry. And I'm thinking, okay, when do you change your patients before change of shifts? If you work 3 to 11, do you change your patients at 10:45 so that when they make rounds at 11, that patient is dry? No, because if you change your patient at 9, chances are she would have peed by 11 so that she's not going to be dry. So when I say that, I usually don't, because in the heat of the moment, that's not what they were here. No, 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 I don't. But if they were to rationalize it, that's what they would think. But they're not thinking like that, because the uppity one, they want to be perfect. They want all their patients to be dry. But you do have some ones that, those lazy CNAs. I know them. And those lazy nurses. I know them. Okay. So if you see a pattern, if it's like the same person that they're complaining a lot about, then you need to address it. Okay. If the shift that is going, the outgoing shift, your CNA is like 2 3 days out of the week comes to you saying her patients are wet, then you can go to the CNA prior and say, can I talk to you for a minute? Last week my CNA is saying that. And also make sure you go check those people yourself. Don't take her word for it. Okay, because you don't want to go address that person on false claims, because that happens sometimes. Because if I put my finger in a diaper and it's like way deep, like somebody had one instance of urination, that is not soaked. But if somebody, what a soaked diaper looks like, right? That means somebody had gone all shift long. That's a different story. You know what I'm talking about. But if somebody, they're gonna be wet sometimes. But if I know I'm going sometime into the rooms and there's trash, there is linen, yeah, that needs to be addressed. Okay. So substandard care, the patients are unshaven. I have had to address mouth care. Oh, that is a pet peeve of mine. Okay. That is a major pet peeve. I said, come on. The people who are mouth breathers, people who are on oxygen, you got to pay attention to their mouth. But they don't have time. They're just running around so much. This is why redesigning how we provide care is so vital. And that is something, another program that I have to tell these people in those long term care facilities. You need to kind of think outside the box. We don't have to deliver care the same way. One of my suggestion is having a hydration CNA, going around and passing fluid and water, making sure your patients are hydrated. I can guarantee you, if I were to do a research study, after you do that for 3 months, you would see you decrease your rehospitalization. And mouth care wouldn't be so much a problem if your patients are hydrated. Anyway, I digress. But that is a major issue. Take that little tip to your unit. Have a hydration CNA. Just like you're doing nail care and stuff, how about putting that CNA to work and hydrate your patients instead? Okay? So make sure you find out if a patient, if you have a CNA who is constantly not doing their work, trash in the room, mouth care is not done, skin, okay. I mean, and then how do you know if there's substandard care? Are you one of those nurses who pass your meds? Let's say you start at 8, by 11 you're doing your treatments, and by 3 you're just rushing to finish. You never see those patients again. How are you going to see if they haven't done their work? You're not rounding, right? Okay. If you don't round, you're not going to see. Goodness. Frequent checks. Address and document if no improvement after you've addressed it with the CNA. Now, this is something I would document somewhere on a piece of paper. Okay. If they don't know how to turn a patient, you can show them, demonstrate how to position with pillows. Okay. How to do skin care, you can demonstrate. Okay. And some people they just can't cut it. Occasionally you have to let people go, but you can't just let people go. Make sure you know what your policy is. I can't even emphasize enough, you guys, know your policy for your facility. You can't haphazardly decide to document, um, mentor, or counsel people. You have to know what your policy is. Ask your DON what is the policy to address whatever the issue is, and make sure you're following that policy. Okay. Just like when the state comes, they're not going to say, oh, you didn't do this. And you always say, your DON is going to say, ED going to say, what is the reg? Show me where we're falling short. Always. You always reference. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Laziness, long breaks. Now, remember earlier I mentioned they may have issues like having 2 jobs, not sleeping, going to menopause. Maybe they were up all night and having anxiety and insomnia. But we know some of them are just plain lazy. I had a little lady, I worked with her. She worked 11 to 7. She comes on. Well, I work until 11, but they tell me she comes on and she was always punctual coming, but then she would park her linen cart, and she made her round, did her vitals, and then she was done by 12, and then they say they don't see her for like 3 hours. I'm like, well, it's a good thing she's not working on my shift, because that wouldn't work on my shift. I would have to keep an eye on her. Okay. But people are not supposed to be taking long breaks like that. They're supposed to be making rounds. And that's why they find people on the floor. That's how they find people dead, because they're not rounding. on patients. During the day, people are moving around in and out. It's okay, but night shift, that is a problem. Okay? So reinforce the policy. I had a CNA that was famous on my shift for going on break and taking an hour, hour and a half. And they say, well, give me Maggie. She goes off and come back. I'm like, okay, where is she? Okay. So I go into the lunch break. I found her and I'm like, what time did you come? I said, well, your other coworkers need to take their break. It's time for you to go back. And then I said, if you keep doing that, I'm going to make everybody sign on, you sign when you leave and then you sign when you come back. She didn't do it again. You have got to do what needs to be done. And the idea is that you have to be fair with everybody. You can't let one person get off with something and then reinforce it with somebody else. And then that's when they say, oh, well, she's her pet. She plays favorite. You can't do that. Okay? So the policy needs to apply to everybody. And when somebody is lazy and take long breaks, then the work doesn't get done. Oh, I'm done with my patient. That's not the point. You can be done with your patients, but then you can do something else. You can go stock into the supply room. You can do some nail care. You can go pass some water. Oh, that's not my floor. What I'm asking, not my hall. What I'm assigning you something to do. And remember, you are the supervisor. The CNA is supposed to work under you. You are their direct supervisor. And I talked to that in my supervisory program, whereas the CNA needs to know that you are the first line supervisor, right? So if she has a complaint, a grievance, or something that is not HR related, that is patient related, she needs to come to you. If she's not satisfied, then she can go to her supervisor, then unit manager, then DON. I had a senior tell to me, well, I'm going to go talk to Mark. Who is Mark, the ED? I'm like, no, ma'am, you won't. You have to follow. It's like, well, I work with him over there. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're going to follow the chain of command. That's disrespectful for you to bypass those people that you're supposed to report to and then go straight to. It was like she was just kind of showing off. I work with him in that facility. I don't care. I don't care. No. Wow. I tell you, they're gonna try you, but let me tell you, you just have to hold your ground. You have to hold your ground. These CNAs will try you, man. They will try you. But you gotta hold your ground. You gotta be strong. You gotta be strong. So as a nurse, you got to be on them. You got to communicate. You got to know what's going on. You got to stay on top of them. You got to help. Okay. Keep going. We only have 7 more slides to go. Appearance. Huh. How about the CNAs with the long nails, the hair? I had a CNA. I was an NP. I'm going into that facility and I walk around. There was a CNA. I mean, I wore braids, but when I go in there, my braids wrapped up. She had braid down under her buttocks. And she's walking around. Whew. I'm sitting there and watching. I'm a guest in that facility, but I was like, I wanted so much to say, what do you do with that hair when you're trying to bathe or to feed somebody? What the heck? This is not a fashion show. I see them coming. I'm like, how are you going to give a bath to Mrs. So-and-so with those nails? If that CNA is on your team, you need to tell her. And again, check your dress code. Check your policy to see what the policy said. Because before you go talk to her and say, do you know the policy said you're not supposed to have nails like that? How many times your CNA comes to you and say, oh, Mrs. So-and-so has a skin tear? Do we know how the skin tear happens? How many times we have to do a change in condition? You have to write an order for this. It could be those darn nails that they're not supposed to have when they're taking care of those fragile skins. If you want to go be in a fashion show, this is the wrong job for you. So all these acrylic nails don't belong if you're a CNA taking care of all people. No, ma'am. And as your CNA, you need to talk to them, saying, you know what? The policy does, but if you have those nails yourself, it's hard for you to tell her about her nails. Need I say more? No. Because you can't go talk to her about her nails if you wearing those. I'm, I went to have a pedicure the other day. The lady, she couldn't even hold a cotton ball in her hand. It's insane. It's ridiculous. So I talk to them. If I see my CNA walking around with hair, I'm like, could you put your hair in a ponytail, please, before you go see my patients? I would. Because that's unsanitary. That is not professional. And if you're going to be on my team, I expect you to be professional. I'm sorry. I will address it. But once you address it in a nice, kind way, not aggressively, you're not conflicting, you're not aggressive or anything, then you don't make it like a big deal. You do a casual conversation, right? And then you kind of watch to see if she complies. And then you address it again. Follow up. And if she does, and you say, ooh, I noticed that. Thank you so much. You go, girl. Keep it positive. Keep it positive. Ooh, hope the dog doesn't start barking. Okay, changing the paradigm. Let's shift. I just talked about all the negatives, all the stuff that we deal with. And, there's more that we could talk about, right? How about we have love entanglements with our CNAs and the residents. We got those too, the fun stuff that happens in long-term care. Oh my God. I had one of my residents, he bought a diamond ring for one of my CNAs and he was in love and he was depressed. I had to treat him for depression because, stuff happens. So let's change the paradigm to one of collaboration. Because, like I said, we're in a marriage. It's a partnership. We can't dissolve the partnership because these patients need it. How can we make it work? Let's see. RPK. The RPK. Respect. RESPECT. Okay. Respect is mutual, guys. Just like I want the residents to respect us and we respect them, we also need to respect our coworkers. Just because we're making more money than our CNAs or LPNs, we need to respect them, right? It's mutual. I don't think I'm saying anything that is new. You guys know that. But knowing and showing are two different things. When you respect someone, it should be reflected in our speech, in our tone, in our demeanor, in how we interact, in how we speak to each other, right? Professionalism, same thing. Code of conduct, how we carry ourselves, how we talk to each other, using all that street language while you're working with the patient, using derogatory terms to refer to each other, or talking about patients in derogatory terms. You have nurses and CNAs chit-chatting and just bad-mouthing a patient, even though the patient may be a difficult patient. What does that say to that CNA if you bad-mouthing that patient while you're talking to the CNA? What does that say? What does that say to that CNA when you are demeaning a resident that you're supposed to care for with a subordinate, with a patient, with a CNA? Think about that. If I was CNA, I would say, well, if she can talk about Mr. Smith like that, I wonder what she say about me, right? So check yourself, okay? Your dress, again, I'm not saying you should, think like you're a street person when you go into work. You're still clean and professional, but tone it down. You don't need to the makeup and the fake eyelashes and hair all over here, nails out to here, heavy perfume. Some people are allergic to all that smell. Leave that stuff at home. All that stuff usually is in your policy. Read the policy. Okay? Kindness. Now, this one might be hard for some people. Some people are not naturally kind. And I know I have a checklist next, a list of things next. If you're not naturally kind, think about those things and start to practice them. And even if you have to fake it till you make it, till it becomes a habit. It takes 3 weeks to develop a habit. If some things are difficult for you, practice them anyway. Some of the stuff is going to become second nature if you practice them repeatedly, okay? Because you have a goal in mind. In your speech, in your interactions, public and private. Don't fake being kind to someone and then go behind their back and blast them. Don't do that. And when you're mentoring someone and you're redirecting someone. Okay, as we are shifting our mindset to one of our PK, respect, professionalism, kindness, these are some simple habits as a nurse, as you're trying to nurture and improve the relationship with your CNAs that you can practice every day or at least weekly. Greet with a smile. When you come on to work, acknowledge your CNA. Say, hey, Mary, how you doing? How was your day? It doesn't cost you anything to say that. Even though you had a fight with your boyfriend before you got there, even though you feel tired and cranky, force yourself. When you get out of your car, put your smile on, right? When you go see your patient, when you rounding, hopefully you're rounding, right? When you go in there, do you go, hey, Mr. Smith, how you doing today? Is that how you greet them? You say, hi, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith doesn't care that you had a fight with your boyfriend. He doesn't care that you didn't have any sleep last night. He's not feeling well and he wants you to be on your A game. So whatever it is that's going wrong in your life, he doesn't give a flip. So when you walk into that facility, that should be your motto. Whatever it is, I'm leaving out there and I'm going to give 100%. That's why I tell you, nurses, when you feel your body tells you you cannot do that third overtime and you're doing it, it's on you. Don't put it on that CNA. Don't put it on that patient. Don't let that staffing coordinator coerce you into doing that third overtime when your body says you need rest. If you're not rested, you're going to be cranky, you're going to be bitchy, you're going to make mistakes, you might kill somebody. Put a smile on your face. Be kind to your CNA. If you see that she likes something, get it for her occasionally, on a spur of the moment. Surprise her. I worked with a nurse. Sometime on a Saturday, I used to do double on the weekend, and I used to go to this Spanish store, and they used to make these little cups of oatmeal, And one day I had one, I was eating one, and then she's like, "Oh, I like that." So I started bringing her, and she loved it. And it's like every time she's like, "Oh, I remember." People remember little small, and it cost me what, $2, something simple. They remember those kind of things. I'm not saying bring a whole dozen of donuts, but just if you go stop to get coffee for yourself when you're coming in, get one for your CNAs. If you go get lunch, if you see that they're busy, Sometime when I was supervising, I'd see, they had a couple of patients that were bad. So I went to one of my LPNs and I'm like, I see you've been busy. I'm going to Publix. I'm going to get you something. And I brought her a sub. She kept repeating that. He's like, oh, I was so hungry that day, Mr. Mike. They remember stuff like that. Simple things. I don't know. Those kind of things come easy to me, and I hope they become easy to you. Okay. Praise them in public. So, you know how you can have a huddle like around shift change, and then you talking and you could say, "Oh, yesterday I was when I was doing my rounds, so and so in room so and so said that so and so give him such a bath, and he said he felt like a new person. It was like way to go, Micheline. Micheline is sitting there, and her teammates are there. You praise in public, and Micheline just felt tall because you recognize that she did something good, and you validated her even though she's a CNA. Mentor in private. That person who was mouthing off and you let her go. And towards the end of the shift, you say, can I talk to you for a minute? And I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a little script on how you start to mentor somebody in private, but you always take them to the side. If you have an office, I never had an office, I would take him like to the shower room or to an empty room or somewhere else. Okay. Show genuine interest. Be present when you're talking to someone. Lend a hand. That means answer a couple of lights. If somebody needs some water, go get it for them. Don't go look for that CNA and say, oh, so and so needs some water. What's wrong with your hand? Set clear expectations. What I'm saying is you can call the CNA and say, you know what? They tell me Mrs. So and so wasn't feeling good and I'm watching her. So if you see anything abnormal, could you please let me know? Let them know what you want them to look for. Don't play favorites. Be fair. Keep your cool at all times. Be the leader of your team. Okay, I think it's the last one. Oh, this is one pearl. Each conversation with your CNA should begin with, Maggie, I'm so happy to have you on my team. The patients rave about you. Today, I'd like you to keep an eye on Mrs. So and so. They told me that this happened, and please, if you see this and this, let me know. Okay? That way, that's your expectation. They don't have to guess. All right. This is a form that I used to use for my CNAs. Ooh, that doesn't show very well here. It used to be called applause, applause. And they used to be like index cards. And if they did something good, I would write it. And I would say, in recognition of so and so. Ooh, what is that? Title. And I say what they did. They did so and so. Family of so and so said this, and gratefully written by Maggie Lazar. And I put the date and I put in the patient's file, so that when they go to do a review of that employee, if they see a bunch of those things in their file, that's good, right? Wouldn't you want to have a bunch of applauses in your HR record? I would. All right. I think we're done. Go get him, Tiger. All right. Janice, you watched all the way. Thank you so much. I don't know if you had any questions. You certainly can type them in if you do, or you can put them in, you can DM me on Facebook, Nurse in the Kitchen. That's my other channel. On Nurse Training and Advocacy, I would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to put this on replay. You'll be able to rewatch this at your leisure. You could please feel free to share them with your team, your staff. And let's see. I don't see anything in the chat. I know this is really a topic that is stressing a lot of people. It doesn't stress me out because I'm kind of old and I know how to handle most most situation, and I kind of keep it light. Don't stress over it. But one thing I want to say to everybody is try to keep yourself safe. Try not never to escalate any situation because we're living in difficult times, and everybody is a little bit edgy. So you always, I used to say I take people in the shower room. Don't ever put yourself in a room nowadays that is. You always make sure it's an open area when there is an exit, so that if you need to get out, so you see a clear path to get out, because you got to always keep your safety in mind. Okay, so I hope that that was helpful, and continue watching for more videos. Thanks. Bye bye. Okay, how do I end this? Uh, Nurse training. End the stream. There we go.